Alrighty, welcome back to another episode of In Depth with David. This is the ninth Red Sox series recap, and this is also the second time that you have seen me today. If you did not see the episode I did earlier of a Patriots draft recap with my friend Joe, go check that one out. But for now, we're going to be talking about the Red Sox 4-game set against the Texas Rangers. It just wrapped up yesterday, but the Sox have an off day today, so we're choosing today to recap it. And once again, I'm joined by my good friend Ricky. Ricky, how are you doing today?
Hanging in there. Kind of tired, but doing all right. Rough series. We'll get into that. No lead burying.
You buried the lead. I'm just kidding.
No lead burying here, but all I will say is I will say one name.
No. Okay. Well, now they know.
Will not elaborate until we get to it, but we'll get to it.
To all the viewers, I'm going to give Ricky the stage later in this podcast to talk about our good subscriber and follower, Adam Ottavino. But what are your general takeaways from this series? I mean, I guess you kind of already said it. It was pretty rough, but
yeah.
Any other takes?
So I don't want to exactly give the results like always. I don't want to bury the lead on what happened in the games, but
we gotta make like a T-shirt that says "Don't bury the lead." We should make merch.
Yeah, we should sell it for either $19 or $10.
$19. Shout out Jason Tatum. But
yep.
Anyways, back to the Sox.
So the series was not what we expected, to say the least, without giving away the result and going revealing more of what we're going to talk about later. But obviously, this series did not go how we were expecting. If you watched the last podcast, we both gave our predictions, and it was different. The result in this series, and in all honesty, I think the Red Sox should have played a lot better than they did, especially in a couple of the games Saturday and Sunday, which I'm not going to say too much about the games, but all I will say is the result could have been differently. The Red Sox their offense definitely looked solid throughout this series. I will say they did have some nice bats. Guys like JD Martinez continued to, show dominant flashes and whatnot. But yeah, we'll get more into it. But to say the least, this series was kind of tough to watch and follow along with. So I don't know how you felt about it, but I'd assume pretty similar.
No, I agree. I actually jinxed the Red Sox. I have to apologize because at the end of the last recap, I said something. I'm like, I don't think this will happen. And the exact thing I said won't happen actually happened. So we'll get into that. But a really disappointing series for the Sox that you just talked about. It seemed like when one thing was going right, the other thing wasn't. I don't think our offense was terrible this series, but when that wasn't working, our pitching was doing better and we couldn't get any run support. Right. Or it was vice versa, and the pitching was great and the offense wasn't. So we'll get into it. But nonetheless, game one of this series, the pitching matchup was Martin Perez versus Kyle Gibson. I believe that's his name. Yep. Mm-hmm. So getting right into it, what do you think of, before I start, what do you think of the Rangers' new field, Globe Life Field? I think it's their first year in the stadium, and I think it looks pretty nice. It kind of looks, it looks like really new. Like it looks almost too nice to be a baseball stadium, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I totally feel the same way. I really like how behind home plate it looked like there was like a restaurant almost.
Yeah.
I like that. That's a cool way to sit and eat and watch the game. And I like the glass. I think Houston has this pretty similar stadium too.
Yeah, I think they have like that seating, like you said, in the back. And then they also have like one stadium has like a restaurant in left field or something. It's pretty cool. But I'm a fan of it, and it was cool playing there for 4 days. But nonetheless, we jumped to the second inning. There was a little bit of a highlight for the Red Sox. Christian Vasquez gets a strike him out, throw him out double play. He's been doing that for years. If you're not familiar with him on the Red Sox, since we called him up like 5 or 6 years ago, he's just a great catcher on defense. You just can't ask for much more. I mean, he's always alert, really good at picking people off, and he just does it again there. So after that, we had first and second in the third inning. Men on first and second in the third, and then Kyle Gibson was able to strike out Xander Bogaerts on 3 pitches. And then the bottom of the fourth, Gallo, I believe it's Joey Gallo. I want to double check and make sure that's his name. Yep, Joey Gallo for the Rangers doubles down the left field line. And for the first time this season, we've been praising the Red Sox outfielders in this podcast, but Verdugo is the one who fields the ball here, and he ends up having some trouble on this play. Right. So what should have just been a double turns into a double, but Gallo was able to advance to third as Verdugo has trouble throwing the ball back in, and it goes past not only Rafael Devers, also Xander Bogaerts, and also Martin Perez. So just kind of a bad throw there. I don't know if they gave Verdugo an error there, but he just needs to do better at bringing the ball in or getting the ball in quickly and efficiently, and he wasn't able to do it there. And then the very next batter is Adonis Garcia, and he hits a sacrifice fly to the warning track, and Gallo is able to score. So just like that, it's 1-0 Rangers. But then in the fifth, Texas has first and second with 0 outs, and luckily the Sox catch a break as Eli White tried to bunt to make it second and third with 1 out, but he ended up popping out to Bogaerts, I believe. So that makes it 1 out now as we kind of catch a break where if you were able to lay that bunt down, we'd be in a much more difficult position. And then Kenner Falefa, the very next batter, strikes out, and there's now 2 away, and then Solar grounds out. So Perez is able to get out of the fifth unscathed, and we're still only down 1-0 at this point. I thought that was pretty good pitching by him. It obviously could have been a lot worse, but nonetheless, we like seeing that from Martin. And then in the top of the sixth inning with the runner on second and 2 outs, Rafael Devers continues his hot start to the season, and he golfs a double down the right field line. Verdugo is able to score, who was previously gone on base earlier in the inning, to make it 1-1. So the Red Sox and the Rangers are now tied. And then Sawamura comes in to relieve Perez in the bottom of the sixth. And do you kind of want to talk about how Sawamura performed in this first game?
Not the best, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so he gave up the 2-run homer to Jose Trevino to give Texas the lead back, making it 3-1 in the sixth. And then in the seventh inning, he gave up another homer to Kenner Falefa to make it 4-1.
Right.
See, I didn't really understand this because he already had a bad sixth inning, and this is probably Sawamura's worst series of the year.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Right. We've talked about Sawamura pretty positively. But yeah, definitely would agree with that. So
he gives up the 2-run homer to Trevino in the sixth inning to give them the lead. And then they bring him back out for the seventh, and he gives up another homer just to kind of add on to the Texas lead. I don't know if I missed something, but I kind of thought this was a bad move by Cora to bring him out for another inning. I mean, he already had a bad inning, and we want to throw him out to pitch again. Mm-hmm. That might have cost us in this game because you don't know what happens if we're down 2 instead of 3 late. And I think that was a bad decision by Cora.
Yeah, I would agree. That kind of reminds me of, I remember we talked about when he put Erod
against the Blue Jays.
Yeah, against the Blue Jays, and then Erod gave up that home run on the on his, I believe, his first pitch of getting put back out. So yeah, that was another, I think, mistake on Cora's part. Probably the second this year, putting Sawamura back in. I definitely agree. I don't know why after he had such a rough inning, he decided to. I would have went with someone else out of the pen. So yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah, I think that's going to go down as one of Cora's few errors until this point in the season. And as I said, Sawamura gave up three runs, so it went from a 1-1 game to a 4-1 game in 2 innings. And then Ian Kennedy, who I believe is the closer for the Rangers, comes in the ninth to shut the door on the Red Sox. So the Texas Rangers end up winning 4-1 and take game 1 of the series. So heading into game 2, the pitching matchup is Nate Eovaldi versus Kohei Arihara. So how do you think Eovaldi pitched in this game?
Pretty solid. I believe he only gave up 1 run in this outing, and it was a win. It was definitely a bounce back. His previous start was pretty rough against who they played last series. I forget. Mariner.
Was it Seattle?
Yeah, it was the Mariners with 2 games. So yeah, he pitched. He had a really rough outing in that Mariners series. I believe they got blown out in that game when he lost. So this was definitely a bounce back outing for Eovaldi. We've talked about how solid he's been thus far. This is what we want to see from him moving forward. This was a solid outing across the board. Really, I don't remember exactly how many he struck out. Did he strike out about 8?
So he got 5 strikeouts, but pretty good. I thought he had it wasn't his best stuff. He went 6 innings, 4 hits, 1 earned run, 2 walks, 5 strikeouts. But just another great quality start for Evaldi, who's been really good stepping up in Chris Sale's absence because, as we've said, Chris Sale's probably going to come back sometime in July or August, but until then, we need the rest of the pitchers, including Nasty Nate, to really step up their games. But this game was pretty much over in the first inning. I would say this was probably the most boring game of the series. The Sox got to Ariara really early. JD had a 3-run homer in the first inning to make it 3-0. And then Bogarts went back-to-back with JD to hit a solo shot, and that made it 4-0 Red Sox just in the first inning. And in the bottom of the second, our old friend Brock Holt hit a single to right, and Adolis Garcia was able to score to make it 4-1. And then if we jump ahead to the top of the third, JD Martinez hits his second homer of the game to deep center. So he already has 2 homers in 3 innings and makes it 5-1. And then 2 batters later, Devers also hits a home run, this time at the opposite field and left as it just gets over that wall to make it 6-1. It's just, to this point in the season, I think it's fair to say that middle part of the order with JD, Bogarts, and Devers has really carried our offense. Really but solid, I think we're going to have to rely on them moving forward.
Even Verdugo, too. I believe his batting average is a little over 300. I think it was 302 last I saw. So I think that, definitely that stretch of him, of Verdugo, JD, Bogarts, and Devers. And as we've also talked about, too, with the opposite field home run by Devers, that's something a continuing trend we've talked about a lot, of them hitting really well there. So that was great to see, too, in this game.
For sure. So that makes it 6-1 already in the third inning, and there will be no more scoring. Sorry to bury the lead, as we always do, but this is pretty much over. I mean, in the fourth inning, Holt had a fly out to Hunter Renfroe, and he ended up getting doubled up because the runner on second for Texas, David Dahl, forgot how many outs there were. So for once, thankfully, the Red Sox aren't the ones making a base running mistake, and the Rangers are the ones who forget how many outs there are. Red Sox capitalized from that. And then, as I said before, Evaldi pitched great through 6 innings, and he actually reached the 1,000 innings pitched mark in his career, which is phenomenal. I didn't think he'd be able to do it because when we first picked him up, there was a lot of concerns about his injury history. And I remember at the beginning of 2019, he missed 3 months because in his first start, he hurt his elbow or something. So just hats off to him for pitching 1,000 innings in his career so far. And I'm sure many more will come, but how would you rate this signing for Evaldi by the Red Sox so far? Obviously, we all know what he did for us in 2018. He was a big part of the second half of that year once we got him at the deadline and helping us win the World Series. But do you think the Red Sox regret bringing him back? Because we gave him a pretty sizable contract, 4 years, about $70 million. But how do you think this acquisition of Evaldi has panned out so far in 3+ seasons?
I actually think it's been solid. When they initially re-signed Evaldi, I wasn't sure how I would feel about it. And I remember 2019, obviously, his injury and his time off, and he didn't look too great. But last year, again, even though the Red Sox were horrible, Evaldi was like the one good pitcher. I remember that was the joke, was like Evaldi's the guy. Like everybody would have to wait through the whole rotation to the day when Evaldi would finally hit the mound. And this year, again, he's been pretty solid. I mean, Erod's been pretty solid too. The both of them, I'd say, are around the same tier, but that's kind of how they always kind of were. I'd say they were always around the same level. But I think all in all, re-signing Evaldi has been a positive. Because of what he did in 2018. And I think 2019 was rough, but last year he was like the only bright spot in that starting rotation. And this year he's been pretty solid. I believe he's got like a 4-2 record, something like that.
Yeah, that sounds about right, I think. So pretty solid. I mean, can't ask for much more. Evaldi's been great up until this point, and we hope it continues. Obviously, I'm not expecting him to be amazing in every start. He's going to have hiccups, but look, if he can come in and slot himself in as a solid number 2 behind Sale once the time is near, then I'm all for it. But after that, who came in? Josh Taylor, Darwin Hernandez, and Austin Bryce all came in relief of Evaldi, and they closed the door on the Rangers. Red Sox win 6-1. We even up the series, but the most important thing that came from this game, and probably the only silver lining to come from this whole series, is today, or this game, was 17-10 day.
Yup, 17-10 day. Shout out Jared Carabas.
And
we were both very excited for this day to come and hoping that it would happen. Like over anything, whatever would happen in this series, whether they would win Thursday or Friday, one of those first two games, win one, lose one, or win both. 17-10 was prophecy. It needed to happen.
And you can't make this stuff up too, because we were 16-9 heading into the series, and we could have won game one, and we already would have reached that at least 17-9, or we could have hit 18-9. But the baseball gods working away where we lose game one, and it's all set up for a do or die 17-10 game.
17-10.
The Red Sox deliver. I mean, look, I don't even care if we win the World Series at this point. You might as well raise a banner at Fenway for 17-10.
Honestly,
I love that meme, and I sent a picture to Ricky where their section. We really shouldn't be promoting other podcasts, but I don't really care. Screw it. Section 10. They made some merch that says 17-10. We are good on a t-shirt. It's $30, which is kind of a little pricey, but I honestly might cop because of how amazing of a meme it is. Would you buy that merchandise?
Honestly, yeah. Carabas is like one of the only like baseball analysts / commentators that I actually enjoy. Like I used to like, I don't want to call anybody out, but I don't like talking Yanks very much.
Oh, I like John Boy. We can say his name.
Yeah, I like cool. John Boy, but
his breakdowns are good
because they suck up to the Yankees too much. But I mean,
his breakdowns are hilarious. So everyone go check him out too. I guess we're just like promoting everyone, but no, I mean I just love the meme, and it's poetic how it happened on the very last day of the month. We become 17-10, and they actually released that merch before the game. So everyone was like, oh my God, you jinxed us. And then the Red Sox came and delivered in big fashion. So
17-10.
Nonetheless, the Red Sox win game 2 of the series to even up the series 1 game apiece. And then we head into game 3, which is Eduardo Rodriguez versus Jordan Lyles. And how do you think Erod? I would say, I mean, this is probably Erod's worst start of the season. I'll just go through the stat line quickly. 5 innings pitched, 8 hits, 4 earned runs, 1 walk, 5 strikeouts. Are you worried about this? I mean, I feel like up until this point, he's kind of gone a little bit lucky with how solid his starts are. He's had to work himself out of some jams, and he's obviously gotten a lot of run support from our team. But are you buying too much stock in this one bad start so far?
I don't think so personally. No, it was a rough start. I was watching this game in B-dubs, and obviously on the big screen and whatnot. And I feel like every time I would turn to like eat or whatever, and I'd check and I'd see kind of the score change and the game get closer, and then the Rangers take the lead, and it was kind of a tough experience, trying to be out and enjoy the atmosphere of Buffalo Wild Wings with the game, but. Yeah, I mean, I don't really put too much stock into it just because last start of Aldi was excellent. So I don't know. I think we just gotta see how it continues to do. I think though thus far this is just really it's like a blip in the radar, we could say.
I agree. I mean, all pitchers, like even the best ones, they all have their hiccups throughout the year. I mean, it's a 6-7 month season. I mean, you can't be perfect the whole way throughout. So, it is what it is. It's going to happen. And it's not like we're expecting the world out of Erod. We're just expecting him to be a number 2 or a number 3 guy. But nonetheless, this was the biggest offensive battle game of the season because in the second inning, Hunter Renfroe hits a 2-run shot to make it 2-0 Red Sox. And then in the third inning, Solak for the Texas Rangers hits an RBI single to bring in Culberson to make it 2-1. Let me see. Did I miss a run somewhere? I might have. No, sorry. So it makes it 2-1. And then Erod walks the bases loaded, or he walks someone to make the bases loaded. And then Nate Lowe hits a 2-run single to make it 3-2 Texas at this point. So just like that, Erod in a couple swings of the bat gives Texas the lead. And in the fourth inning, Devers hits a leadoff double, and then Vasquez singles to make it 1st and 3rd, and there's no outs. And then Bobby Dahlback, who's been quiet so far this year, has an RBI ground up to score Rafael Devers to make it 3-3. And then in the 5th inning, back to the Red Sox being on offense. Christian Arroyo hits a single, and he ends up stealing second. And then a bloop single by JD Martinez is able to score Arroyo to make it 4-3. So is it? I don't think the Red Sox have really stolen many bases so far this year. So to see Arroyo be aggressive on the base paths and, know when to run if the ball's going to drop or not is really good, because we've talked about this, how in the early part of the year, the Red Sox were really screwing themselves over with a ton of base running blunders. So I think it's Arroyo just put on the clinic in this situation right here with base running, which is good to see.
Yeah, that was definitely one positive for sure out of this game.
So, yeah, just excellent base running by Christian, gives us the lead back. And then Bogarts hits an RBI single to score Alex Verdugo to make it 5-3. So just like that, the Red Sox have a really big inning, and they end up taking the lead again. So at the end of 4.5, it is 5-3 Boston. And then after that, before that, Vasquez, the bases were actually loaded, so the Red Sox could keep adding on to their tally. We're already up by 2, and it's still the 5th inning. But Vasquez hits a grounder to the third baseman, and instead of going for a double play or just throwing it to first, he makes a smart play and throws it home for the force out. So no runs scored, and there's 1 out. And then after that, Bobby Dahlback and Hunter Renfroe strike out in back-to-back at-bat appearances. So the Red Sox had bases loaded with 0 outs, and they were unable to add on to their lead. And a lot of people are probably going to say, so what? Because we're already up 2 runs at that point, and we had already scored in that inning. But you got to feel like this is a missed opportunity by the team. And we'll keep talking about this, how there's a lot of missed opportunities by the Sox on offense in this series. But we got to capitalize there in situations like that, bases loaded with no outs, because that was an opportunity to really break open this game.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's just disappointing, and we'll see the repercussions in the bottom of the 5th inning. Kinner Falefa takes Eduardo Rodriguez deep to make it 5-4. And then the 6th inning, one of our good friends from the early days of this recap, Matt Andriese, gets taken deep by Willie Calhoun to make it 6-5. So he gives the Rangers the lead right back. Like I've said at the beginning of this podcast, it's either the offense is great and the pitching is bad, or the pitching is bad and the offense is great. And it just really comes back to haunt us here. And again, we just get exposed with Matt Andriese because our bullpen is just not that strong, and it ends up coming back to haunt us in this instance. Just a terrible pitch by Matt. I mean, I'm sorry, but he just really left it high in the zone, and Kinner Falefa took him deep, or Willie Calhoun took him deep. And then the 6th inning, Kinner Falefa hits one on the ground past Christian Arroyo and past Renfroe and right. Renfroe could have had a play on this one, but it kind of went under his glove and rolled all the way to the wall, and it turns into a triple. And Culberson scores to give Texas another insurance run to make it 7-5 Rangers. And in the 7th, we have a little bit of life where Vasquez hits a sac fly to bring in Xander Bogaerts, and that makes it 7-6. And in the 8th inning, for the second time in 3 days, Sawamura comes in. And how did Sawamura do in this game?
I'm trying to remember.
Not good again.
Not good. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, this game. I was in B-dubs, so I was trying to focus on the wings and not the game at this point.
Are you in support of bringing Sawamura when we're down 1? I don't know. I feel like maybe we should have gone with a different pitcher, because Sawamura, I like him more when we're up, bringing him in, because I feel like he does a good job securing the lead. But
I think so too, yeah.
Is there anyone else you can think of if you would throw in that situation? I mean, I'd like throwing in someone like a Whitlock or something if he was available, or maybe in Felipe Valdez, Darwin.
Yeah, Felipe or Whitlock, or even our boy.
We'll Adam get to him in a minute.
Yeah, we'll get to him, but maybe we could have put him in there, but I don't know. Well, we'll talk about him, but.
So yes. Sawamura gives up an RBI double to Culberson as an insurance run, so it's 8-6 Texas now. And then for the second time in 3 days, Ian Kennedy, their closer, comes in, closes the door on the Sox in the 9th. Texas wins 8-6, and they take the first 2 out of 3 in this series. So now we're going to head into Game 4. And Game 4, the pitching matchup is Garrett Richards versus Mike Foltynewicz. And how do you think this game went? How do you think this pitching matchup went? obviously, we know how Garrett Richards did in his last outing. It was a gem against the Mets, much needed. But
Yeah.
how would you describe how he pitched yesterday against the Rangers?
I would say average. Honestly,
Really
I mean,
interesting.
for Garrett Richards, this wasn't the worst outing it could have possibly been. From if I remember correctly, the game was pretty low scoring.
Yes. So yeah,
Richards
it
was
was it was decent scoring, but Richards did a good job of holding them in check.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Richards pitched okay. I mean, look, it was going to be hard to top his gem against New York last week, but 5 innings pitched, 4 hits, 1 earned run, 1 walk, and 7 strikeouts. I thought he did a solid job.
Yeah, 7 Ks is pretty good for 5 innings. So
right, and we need these quality starts out of our number 5 guy because, as I've said, and as you said, we need all the pitching depth we can get. So, nonetheless, getting into this game, Richards did a good job right out of the get-go, getting out of a jam in the first inning, striking at the last 2 batters. And in the second inning, Bogarts hits a pop-up to the second baseman, Solak, and Solak loses the pop-up in the sun. But they end up calling this one a hit, which really confused me because I get he lost it in the sun, but it's like a Little League pop-up. So I thought they should have ruled that an error. I don't know. What do you think about plays like that where outfielders lose it in the sun? Do you think they should be shown empathy or pity, or do you think they should rule them as a hit still?
I think it should get ruled as a hit. I don't. Solak should have. I don't know. He should have been more on top of things. Expected that. I know we've seen Red Sox outfielders struggle with the sun. I know in that Seattle series a little bit, Hunter Renfroe kind of struggled with the sun in one game and made kind of a similar mistake. But I don't think that they should be given a excuse for that. I think that should still count as a hit just because you're kind of supposed to be, as an outfielder, you're just kind of supposed to be on top of things a little bit better. So I thought that was kind of, I don't know.
So Marwin hits a double to make it second and third, and Renfroe has an RBI groundout. This is all in the second inning still, by the way, to bring in Bogarts to make it 1-0 Boston. So Solak's losing it in the sun comes back to haunt the Rangers here. And in the fourth inning, Bogarts is in the news again as he hits a solo shot to make it 2-0 Boston. I think this might be the beginning of a huge power strike by Bogey. I mean, obviously he had a coming out party with a couple homers finally against the Blue Jays a couple series ago, but this is all really encouraging to see him hitting for power a lot lately.
Yeah, I would agree. I think his batting average lately has been excellent. His ability to hit deep is definitely something that's improving, and yeah, I'm really excited to see where Bogarts goes from here because I think he has the potential to really help this team out, being kind of a middle of the order guy. Yeah.
So after that, 2-0 Boston, and then the bottom of the fourth, Gallo scores on an RBI groundout from David Dahl to make it 2-1 Boston. It was a groundout to first, and as I was watching this game, it was a weird play because it looked like it kind of went foul down the first base line, but they ruled it fair. And obviously Marwin was able to get to it and the Red Sox were able to get an out of it. But these plays are so weird because they aren't reviewable. You can't review whether a ball went fair or foul, which I don't know how I feel about that. Do you think plays like that, where it's kind of a close call if the ball went fair or foul, do you think those are reviewable? Because I think by MLB rule, you can't. So do you think teams should have the ability to review plays like that? Because it's similar to something like balls and strikes, where if you review it, it's kind of messing with the integrity of the game, in my opinion.
I would say the same. I think it would kind of mess with the game a little bit.
So, nonetheless, Red Sox got an out, but the Rangers got a run. So, in the bottom of the fourth, it is 2-1 Boston. And then in the fifth, JD Martinez with a chance to drive in some more runs, grounds into an inning double play with first and third. It's just, I don't know. It's really concerning to me because this was a theme, the Red Sox leaving runners in scoring position all series long. And you look at the prior games in the series where we blew leads or gave up leads, and you wonder maybe if we had capitalized on these situations, things would have been different. Are Are you buying stock in this whole thing where do you think could be a recurring issue where we're leaving too many runners in scoring position, or do you think we just had bad series offensively at times?
I think it was just a bad series, personally, because the Red Sox have kind of showed resiliency in a lot of situations thus far, and I think, yeah, they're able. I feel like they've been able to hang in there most series. I think this series was just a disappointment, and I hopefully that we can get into the next couple series, but I think they have the chance to resolve that. But yeah, I wouldn't put too much stock in that, honestly. Yeah, I mean, if it continues and it's against teams that aren't very good, because the Rangers obviously aren't the greatest team, that might become a little concerning.
Yeah, I mean, like we've said, this is a marathon, not a sprint. So there's going to be hiccups. You can't be perfect in every series, unless you're the 2018 Boston Red Sox. But it is what it is. I don't take too much stock in it either. But jumping ahead of the sixth inning, Darwin Hernandez comes in relief for Garrett Richards, and he ends up getting a couple strikeouts. And the more notable one was he struck out Joey Gallo on a pitch that looked like it should have been a ball, but they called it a strike. And Gallo ends up getting really frustrated with the umpire, and he ends up getting himself ejected. Right. And then the manager comes out, Chris Woodward, to protect his player, and he also gets ejected. So I don't know. Do you think that players should be allowed to argue balls and strikes a little bit? Because obviously the golden rule in baseball is if you argue balls and strikes, it's pretty much famous last words. You're going to get ejected. But do you think players and managers should be allowed to just say, that was a bad call. I really think that should have been a ball, or vice versa. And do you think they should be able to say that without having to worry about being ejected?
I think within reason, yes, honestly. I think if the manager is going to come out, throwing like the Boone incident with the famous Boone incidents we've seen with the bat banging and the yelling, our guys
savages in the box,
or take for example here, and same with the players. Like, I feel like if you're within reason and you're arguing with the ump, I feel like that should be fair. If you're gonna throw your bat down, you're gonna square up to them. You're gonna
square up.
You're gonna swear at them. Like, I don't blame them for ejecting you, or the manager in that case, or the catcher, whoever is involved. But yeah, I feel like there should be some say in situations like that. So I think some Ranger fans must have been a little bit frustrated with that, I'm sure. So,
do you also think that obviously the Boone incident that happened last week, just talking about the Yankees for a second, was he got ejected after arguing I mean, this is kind of similar to what I'm about to say, but you can't argue calls that are being challenged. You can't argue the ruling after it's been made, because if you come out of your dugout after the challenge decision has been made, you're going to get ejected. Do you think there should be a little leeway with that, or no? Because a lot of people say the decision's already been made. Don't come out of the dugout, or I'm going to toss you. What are your thoughts on that?
In that case, I think they should just stay complacent and listen, like Boone didn't do. He was specifically told, don't leave the dugout, and he came out. In that case, like, you're wrong. Like, what he did, that's just stupid. Like, he knew he wasn't supposed to. He knew he'd get ejected, and he did it anyway. And I understand, his frustration in that particular game, because I know his team is kind of floundering. I mean, they're doing meh now, but I get it, but you can't do that. That was just stupid.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty straightforward, because, like, what does you coming out of the dugout to argue a call that won't be reversed? What does that solve? The call has already been made by the people in New York. Right. As much as we're all crapping on the replay system this year, it is what it is. You have to respect the call. You know what you're getting yourself into as soon as you step out of that dugout after the decision's been made. So I agree with you on that. I think that's a different situation for sure. But in the seventh inning, after that whole fiasco, which, by the way, I got a good chuckle out of it. I mean, you don't really see players get ejected much anymore. I feel like you don't really see much anger in sports as a whole lately. So it was interesting to see people get ejected in baseball again. It brings me back to good old times of the game. But in the seventh inning, after that whole thing, Kike Hernandez scores Hunter Renfroe from third on an RBI single to make it 3-1. And then the bottom of the seventh, Garrett Whitlock comes in. And how did Garrett Whitlock do in this outing?
Not the greatest. I think this was the first time I would say Garrett Whitlock kind of came down to earth. He struggled a little bit. He had a couple nice strikeouts, which were notable. But he did, I believe, give up. Did he give up a home run?
So that's what I was just going to talk about. He gave up his first homer of the season.
Right. Yeah. So he kind of came down to earth. He didn't pitch horribly, but at the same time, this wasn't the Garrett Whitlock that we and many people have been really hyping up as like the ace, the insane guy coming out of the pen. So I don't know, but I personally, like we've been talking about with the whole putting stock kind of theme that's been big in this particular podcast. With that too, I wouldn't really, but because it is pretty normal for people to give up home runs and guys to struggle now and then. So I don't know. I don't think this was the best outing from Whitlock, to say the least. I mean, yeah, it is what it is. But
see, I have to call out the announcers for the Sox here because they said they put up a graphic right before Whitlock pitched saying he has yet to give up a home run this season. And 2 pitches later, what do you know? He gets taken deep by Kender Falefa, which ended up making it 3-2 at this point. And we've seen this all across sports where announcers jinx the players. A couple weeks ago, Kemba Walker missed a free throw after missing 19 straight or making 19 straight. Right. And the announcers mentioned that streak. And then a couple years in the Super Bowl, the announcers Romo and Nance were talking about how Stephen Gostkowski was 19 for 19 or 20 for 20 in his last 20 field goal attempts in indoor stadiums, and he ended up missing. So.
Right.
Do you think the announcers jinx is a real thing? Like, do you think that's like actually happened? Do you think it's just pure coincidence, or do you think the announcers jinxing the players is actually a real thing?
I think it's coincidence, but it's kind of funny, and it's definitely weird. And we do see it, like you just mentioned, frequently. So maybe it is. I don't know, but I think it's kind of just coincidence. But who knows?
Yeah, so Whitlock gets jinxed there. It was bound to happen, though. He's been perfect up until this point, and
Right.
He had a 0.00 ERA in May, which is ridiculous. So after that, he's able to recover, and he only gave up 1 run. His official stat line was 1 inning pitch, 2 hits, 1 earned run, 1 strikeout. So not bad at all. And then after that, we're going to head into 8th inning. So the good old 8th inning with our Red Sox up 3-2 at this point, and fan favorite of the In Depth with David podcast, Adam Ottavino, the setup man, comes in, and I'm going to give you the full floor. You can talk as much as you want about Adam Ottavino. How did he pitch in this game? Our good friend who's on his redemption tour. The redemption tour was taking a stop in Texas. How did it go?
Mr. Inconsistent, Adam Ottavino. It's like every other podcast we're roasting him, and the other one we're complimenting him. This is crazy. This is like the biggest love-hate relationship in sporting history. Adam Ottavino,
sporting history.
To be honest, I mean, I'm not going to say I expected it because, he wasn't horrible in his last mound appearance before this. And, we've seen this happen multiple times now where he's been in positions where he's helped the Sox to win and helped them to lose, and obviously this was on the losing end. Adam Ottavino it was just frustrating to see him just kind of throw the game away. It's tough because I don't want to drag Ottavino completely, because the Red Sox, as a team, and I think we can kind of reflect upon the whole series now that it's practically over in our talk about it. But as we've talked about, the Red Sox as a whole kind of struggled through this series. So I don't want to drag just Ottavino, but it's starting to get a little concerning how inconsistent he is. I feel like sometimes he's excellent, and sometimes he's terrible. I mean, as we always say, the Minnesota game. He'll have games like the Minnesota game, and he'll have games like the following series after that, which I think was against the White Sox.
And he pitched good against Seattle, too, if I remember.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, he just imploded. Solak had a leadoff walk, which leadoff walks just kill any pitcher, and Dahl was able to score him, so it's 3-3. And then our old friend Brock Holt just burns us with an RBI single that made it 4-3, and then Kinder Falafo scored on that same play because Alex Verdugo bobbled it in center, so that made it 5-3. And then Kennedy just closes it out again for the third time in the series in the ninth inning, shuts the door on the Sox, and the Rangers surprisingly take 3 or 4 from us. But going back to that Ottavino point, I'm starting to get concerned too, because, we were laughing, we were having a good time just embracing the Ottavino meme in the earlier podcast, just like, sometimes it's like the Drake song. Sometimes he's good, sometimes he's not. Like, obviously those aren't the
sometimes we laugh, sometimes we cry. I guess that now. I mean, Drake said it himself. He's right.
Right. God, what a podcast. We've talked about John Boy, we talked about Carabas, and now we're talking about Drake and Ottavino. Can't ask for much more in this episode, so that's why you should subscribe. Free advertising. Going back to Ottavino, though, would you be open to cutting him? Say if it's like July, say that we're at the trade deadline, July 31st, and Ottavino continues being consistently inconsistent.
Right.
Do we move on from him and try and trade him or cut him? Or do you just say we ride out the rest of the season with him? Because he's only on a 1-year deal. So do we maybe trade him to a contender?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's tough. I don't think we should cut him at all, even if he continues to be inconsistent. I like the point you just made about trading him to a contender or trading him to a different team or just riding it out and just not putting him in unless they have like a lead, I think. Maybe if they're in a position where it's a little closer or it's a game where they're so far behind that they just can put him in, that's fine. They could just do that, put him as one of those kind of relievers. But yeah, I don't know if I would necessarily say the Sox should cut him come July, late in the season, but we'll really have to see. But a trade, if again, and if he has value, like there's trade assets and we can get something back for him, whether maybe another reliever, maybe some sneaky deal like another Whitlock kind of guy, or maybe get some prospects or whatever and just kind of trade him to a better team. That might not be a terrible idea, but I don't know. We really have to, I don't know. It's kind of like a waiting thing, but I don't think I would cut him. I think I would either just hold on to him or trade him or just not put him in as much.
That's what I was just going to ask. Do you think we should demote him and maybe give the setup role to someone like a Sawamura or a Whitlock now? So have them come out in the 8th and have maybe Ottavino come in a little earlier in like the 6th or 7th, because the fact that these issues are continuing into the month of May, I mean, we've said this where you give everyone the month of April to, dust off all the cobwebs. Pretty soon we might be having the same talk about Bobby Dahlback because he's been non-existent. So do you think it would be a good idea to maybe throw in someone like Whitlock in the setup position instead of Ottavino for a little bit?
I think, honestly, if this keeps up for a little longer, I don't even know if I would say the rest of May. I'd say maybe the next few weeks. I wouldn't mind that, putting somebody like a Sawamura or even maybe a Valdez or a Whitlock as the setup guy. And I would keep Barnes where he is. We didn't really talk about Barnes, but he was named I believe the AL reliever of the month.
Yeah, he actually, he didn't do much this series. He came in and he pitched a third of an inning yesterday, but
yeah,
I think that was well deserved. That was a good point you just brought up about the reliever of the month. I mean, he definitely deserved that.
Yep.
I don't know about Ottavino because he's only on a 1-year deal. We don't know how the rest of the season is going to go. Maybe the Red Sox bring him back, maybe not. I don't envision us being true contenders by the deadline still. Maybe we'll still have a winning record. We might fight for a wild card spot still, but it might just be better to cut our losses at that point and maybe get some more prospects, because there are going to be teams that want him. When he's on, he's unhittable. I mean, we saw how he pitched against, I think, Toronto and Seattle. Like, that was phenomenal. But just he's the most interesting player on the Red Sox to me because he's just so consistently inconsistent.
Mm-hmm.
But that's going to wrap up the series, as I just said. Rangers take 3 of 4. This series, as we kind of talked about, just exposed a lot about the Red Sox and how were really not contenders in our opinion. I mean, we all enjoy this start. What's our record right now? 17-12 at this moment. We're 0-2 since 17-10 day, unfortunately. But look, this team is just not as good as the start indicates. I mean, we're benefiting a lot from that 9-3 start and that 9-game winning streak, because since that 9-game winning streak, we've been 8-9. We've lost 9 of our last 17 games. So I don't know. This team is exactly what I think they are, and probably what you think in these last few weeks, where we're just really mediocre. We're not amazing, but we're not awful. And I'll take that. I mean, I'll take a 75 to 85 win season. That's what it's looking like this team will be. This series exposed a lot of bad things, where if we're losing games when we score 6 runs, that's going to be an issue, because we've said we need this team's going to win a lot of games on the back of their bats. And if we can't even do that, we're going to be in trouble. And we're leaving runners on base. We can't even get run support for our pitchers. It's just a lot of issues. But as much of a disappointing series as this was, you can't take too much stock into it. I love using that quote now, or using that phrase, but we'll see what happens. So who are your players of the series for the Red Sox?
So for the Red Sox, I would give the players of the series on offense. I'd give it to JD Martinez and Xander Bogaerts. Xander, we just talked a little bit about him starting a potential hot streak. You know, he's hitting pretty well right now. He's doing his thing. And JD Martinez is coming back around too. That 2 home run game was super impressive. I believe he still leads the majors in home runs, and he's got a ton of RBIs, I think like 26 or 27. He's having a solid year. He's definitely looking like a top-tier DH in the AL, which is great. That's what we need from JD. I'm glad he was a little bit cool for a bit. It's kind of good to see. As of late, he's kind of been warming back up again, and really now that we're a month in, we can kind of say, okay, JD kind of looks like he's back. I've been seeing a lot of people talking about that and saying, yeah, I think he's back. And then for a pitcher pick, I think I'd go with Eovaldi, just because he had a solid outing. I mean, it wasn't the best we've seen Eovaldi pitch, but it also wasn't horrible. It was kind of a Martin Perez type start. Shout out Perez Day. And I think for a reliever pick,
wasn't really any of this.
Yeah, that's tough. I don't think I'm going to go with anybody, being completely honest. So I don't know who you have for your offense and pitching and whatnot. But yeah, at least for me, I don't think there was any real good relievers.
So for my offense, my number 1 guy was Bogaerts with a couple homers this series. He had a 3-hit game in Game 4. Just did a good job getting on base all series, as you touched upon. My honorable mention goes to JD, because he did have a 2 home run game in Game 2 of this series. But the only reason why I have him as honorable and not number 1 is because he did ground into a double play yesterday that, if he was able to drive in a runner, that really gives us a good chance of winning, in my opinion. So just a missed opportunity for him, but he also had a solid series. And then pitching, Eovaldi, great start in Game 2. 6 innings pitched, 4 hits, 1 earned run, 2 walks, 5 strikeouts. Can't complain about that. How about for the Rangers? Who are your players of the series?
So for me, I have Isaiah Kiner, Falefa, and Nick Solak as my offensive players. I think Falefa had I believe 2 home runs this series.
Yep. I think so.
Yeah, he had a pair of home runs. I feel like he was always getting some pretty clutch hits. He definitely had a solid offensive series. Was really able to hammer at some of the Sox better starters and relievers, which it was impressive to see. And then Solak, obviously, he had that glasses incident we discussed defensively, but he had a pretty decent amount of hits. I think he's a younger guy. If I'm not, yeah, he's 26. He's not too old. He seems like he could be a potential solid young player for the Rangers. I like him. He seems like a pretty solid hitter. And I think we talked about this, but the Rangers, a lot of their roster was rather unfamiliar, at least to me. I don't know how you felt about it beforehand. I knew about Gallo and Brock Holt and Chris Davis and a few of their other players and pitchers. But yeah, it was some of these guys definitely had some solid series. And I think for pitching, I would give the pitching Hold on. I've got the roster pulled up. I'm trying to remember who pitched yesterday. I forget his name.
Fulton-Awitz, I think he's their ace, I want to say.
Yeah, Fulton Awitz, however you say his last name. Yeah, Mike
mouthful.
Fulton Awitz. Yep, here it is. Yeah. Mike Fulton Awitz, I would say, is their pitcher because he had a pretty solid outing yesterday. And then, yeah, I'll definitely. And then Kyle, what's his name? The reliever.
Let me see.
Who's their reliever that they had 3 of the 4 games? I forget
Ian Kennedy.
Yeah, Ian Kennedy. Right. Yeah, I have Ian Kennedy as their reliever. So
for me, for the Rangers, I had Kenner Falefa. He recorded at least 1 hit in all 4 of the games this series, which is really impressive. And obviously, he had the 2 home runs, so he was huge. Willie Calhoun as an honorable mention because in Game 3 he took Matt Andrees deep on an absolute moon rocket, so that was pretty impressive. Brock Holt, yesterday's game, our old friend, burned us with the eventual game-winning 2-run single or 2-run double, whatever you want to call it. I think it was a 2-run single, and then advanced the second. And then from my pitcher, Ian Kennedy, as you just said, the closer, coming in 3 times in 4 days to really just shut the door on us. I mean, can't ask for much more than that for your closer on your team. So before I end this, I just wanted to ask one question. Or we'll talk about 2 things, but do you think JD Martinez is a serious MVP candidate? Because he's off to a hot start this year. His on-base plus slugging percentage is like over 1,000, which is ridiculous in May. And he already has 9 homers, 26 RBIs. I mean, we're getting used to this stuff in Boston besides obviously last year's COVID season, but that doesn't really count for me for anyone. But just insane.
Yeah, I don't know, honestly. His stats don't lie.
Him and Devers are up there in the top 5 for offense, which is crazy.
Yep.
So, do you think he could be an MVP?
That's tough. I don't know. There's a lot of good talent in the AL, so
it's still too early. But if I had to give it to someone right now, I'd probably give it to him.
Yeah, right now, definitely. But we got to really see how he can. If he continues hitting like he has, then there might be a legitimate shot. But
do you think he can continue staying hot? I mean, he did it all of 2018, most of 2019.
I think so, considering he had that stretch where he was a little cooler and he's kind of came back around again. I think that resiliency, he didn't have that at all last year. I think last year in total, he's already passed his home run total from last year, and I think RBI close to that. I'm correct. I'm not sure, but JD is definitely looks invested, and I think we might see a really solid 2018-19 caliber. If not MVP, he'll definitely be an AL All-Star for sure.
I sure hope so. And I mean, that's the power of getting your iPad back. I mean, it's just done wonders for JD so far this season. Yeah. Oh, yeah. One more player of the series for Texas, I forgot to say, is Sawamura. He did a great job for the Rangers.
Yeah, nice job, Sawamura.
We love you.
I keep making fun of him. He's my guy, my dog. But
I hate slandering him. But now we'll take the last few minutes to preview the Red Sox next series against Detroit. So the pitching matchups are going to be Nick Pivetta versus Michael Fulmer in Game 1. Fulmer is the prospect or one of the players that they actually got back for David Price in a trade a few years ago when they sent him to the Blue Jays. Game 2, Martin Perez versus Casey Mize. Mize is 1-3 at the 5.06 ERA. Perez 0-2, 4.7 ERA. And then the final game of the series is Eovaldi versus Spencer Turnbull. Spencer Turnbull has a 1-2 with a 4.5 ERA, and Eovaldi is 4-2 with a 3.63 ERA. How do you think this series is going to go, this 3-game set against Detroit?
So I predicted that the Red Sox would go 3 of 4 in this series, and they didn't. So I don't want to say the Red Sox are going to sweep the Tigers, although I think it's really possible because they're only 8-21 thus far, and they've really struggled they struggled greatly against the Yankees and White Sox the last 2 series, who are pretty solid teams, and the Red Sox I would consider one of the better teams. So I'm not sure. As you mentioned too, some of the pitching staff have pretty high ERAs. I think the Red Sox could take advantage of that. I think the Red Sox will take 2 of 3 in this series. I don't want to say a sweep because this series obviously was disappointing. I don't want to get my hopes up and think they'll sweep. I think they could, and there's a chance they can, but I'm just going to say 2 out of 3 just to play it safe. I don't know if you feel the same way, but
I'm just gonna say they sweep them. Just for the sake of variety, I guess.
Yeah.
Look, we should sweep this team. I mean,
Mhm.
Fulmer is their best pitcher they're throwing out, and he has a 3.86 ERA, which I think we can easily attack. And we're going to have Pavetta on the mound. Pavetta's 2-0 at Fenway with a 2.29 ERA, which is just ridiculous, and he's really been reliable so far this year. Perez versus Mize, that might give us some trouble, but I like the upper hand for the Sox in our offense. I think we can really get to Mize, and then it should be a slam dunk in Game 3 with Evaldi on the mound. I mean, come on. We always seem to do good with giving him run support, so
Yeah.
I don't see why that can't be any different against Turnbull and the Tigers. So
Mhm.
I'll just lock in and say they're going to sweep. But again, I have to apologize because at the end of last podcast, I said there's no way I don't see us losing 3 or 4 of the Rangers, and that's exactly what happened. So maybe I'm a jinx for the Red Sox, but hopefully we can sweep them, at least win 2 out of 3. We need to get back on track a bit. So hopefully that happens. But yeah, that's going to wrap it up for the podcast, unless you have any other things you want to bring up.
I was going to mention Bobby Dahlback. I know you said maybe wait a little longer, but I just was thinking of something as we were talking about inconsistency. Just one last thing we could touch upon it like in future podcasts, but would you potentially call up Michael Chavis again? I believe he's still in AAA and replace Dahlback with Chavis again and see how he does, or what do you think about that? Possibly.
So I don't know if I'd replace, but I wouldn't mind maybe sending down like a Franchi at this point.
Yeah, that would definitely.
And because Chavis is really underrated, he had a great rookie season, and obviously he's kind of gotten screwed because at the end of 19 he got hurt, and I don't think they really gave him much of a chance in 20. And he had really good spring training too, and he was really PO'd that we optioned him to Worcester, and he's been down there since the season started. But that's not a bad idea. I feel like if we throw him into the mix, that makes things interesting. And he's another guy who can play first, he can play third, he can play second. He can play the corner outfield positions too. They were teaching him how to do that. So he's a really versatile option, and the Red Sox love and really need versatility right now in these early stages of sustainability with the high bloom during the high bloom era. So if he comes up and performs well, I wouldn't hate that. And honestly, I think that could also be good for Dahlback and maybe light a fire under him and maybe make him realize that he needs to step up his game, because a lot of Red Sox fans are being naive and just saying like he'll be fine, he'll do good, but he's only had one good series all year, and that was against Minnesota, and that was only one good game. And he did hit a homer against the Mets, but he did nothing else besides that. And we're waiting for him to break out. And if we go into June and he's still CGI Bobby, I mean, I'm going to be a little concerned. So yeah, I wouldn't mind bringing up Chavis to replace Cordero at this rate too. I mean, even if Bobby's still in the lineup, Cordero's just not really doing it for me. I'm still one of his biggest fans, but you can't strike out 50% of the time and expect to be in the lineup still. Yeah. So that's not a bad idea, because he had an amazing spring training too, as I touched upon. So I hope they consider it, but knowing them, they probably won't. I feel like will probably.
I was just wondering. I was like, what happened to Michael Chavis? Like, I didn't mind him, the ice horse. Like, I kind of miss him. Like, I was just thinking about that. I guess let's start a hashtag to wrap this podcast up. Hashtag Chavis watch. Like, be on the lookout just to keep your eyes
watch. I like that.
Back on that true redemption tour. If Ottavino can't do it, Chavis will. The ice horse. He's gonna whinny his way back to the majors.
Yes, sir. Yeah, because he had a great rookie year when we called him up, because that was the year right after we won the World Series. We were struggling at the beginning and we needed a burst or spark, and we called up Chavis at the end of April, and he had a homer that he hit. Like, they did the math. It could have cleared 2 green monsters. It was that high in the sky. And he had like 16 homers in his rookie year. It was ridiculous. And if it wasn't for him getting hurt, which has kind of been an issue since then, he'd probably still be on the roster. But I think he has a lot of potential, and I hope he gets a shot at some point this year because we kind of need a spark, or we're going to need a spark at some point. So I hope Hein Bloom calls him up, but we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, hashtag Chavis Watch. I like that. So that's going to do it for this podcast. A little bit of a disappointing one to recap. As we said, Red Sox ended up losing 3 of 4 to Texas, a team that was 10-15 entering into the series. But we did reach the 17-10 benchmark, so there's always a silver lining. But that's going to wrap it up. If you enjoyed this podcast, absorb the like button, absorb the subscribe button. There's going to be more Red Sox podcasts coming from me and Ricky. Celtics podcast coming in the future. Me and my friend Joe just did a Patriots podcast earlier today that you can check out on my channel. Bruins podcasts are coming too. There's a lot more episodes coming. Personal interviews, you name it. We'll have it probably. But hope you all enjoyed this video. Please leave some comments down below. What you like about us, what you don't like about us, what you like about what we talk about, what you didn't like about what we talk about. Yeah, just let us know. Any feedback is good in these early stages of this podcast. We'll take it all in stride. We'll take it on the chin. So that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you again, Ricky, for joining me. And we will be talking to you all at the end of the 3-game set against Detroit. Alrighty, everyone. Have a good day. Take it easy.